Hello, friends. This week we're reading through and reflecting on chapter 2 of the book Love is the Way with Bishop Michael Curry. I hope you've been able to watch the videos each week. They'll come out on Tuesday in the Daily Bread email, and hope you're able to join with us. You can purchase the book at your local bookstore, on Amazon. Here at the church, we have a handful of copies for sale for $15. So chapter 2, friends, is titled Looking for God. And the question he poses to us is, how do I find God's love? The way Curry navigates this question with us is by telling the very personal story of the death of his mother, Dorothy, when he was 14 years old, though she actually got sick for the first time when he was only 10. Living in East Buffalo, New York, his father was an Episcopal priest serving a parish there, and mother was a brilliant mathematician, had attended the University of Chicago for her PhD back in the 1940s, when that was, let's just say, very rare. So his mother gets very sick, something of a brain bleed, and goes into a coma basically for 4 years before she passed. And the balance of the chapter is about the remarkable way that the community of faith of which they were a part surrounded them, quite literally and figuratively, with the hands of God, the arms of God's love, and just enveloped them. He talks about his cousin who relocated to Buffalo after graduation to be a teacher in that community so he could help out. They talk about Josie, the good friend from church we talked about last week, who stepped in and did whatever they could to help. And several other folks get named in the story he tells, but the chapter is really about how we see God in the faces of one another, and then the love that one another that we offer to one another. So in particular, I would lift up, he in the middle of the chapter discusses our need to find rituals of comfort, which we're pretty good at in the church. Whether they're life-giving still or not is always the open question that urges us forward as we experiment. But he discusses the importance of gathering for worship, of praying together, of just those tangible acts of loving our neighbor. A couple of lines here I might just read for you on page 39. Curry writes, "God may be the source of love, but people are often the vessels. Once you understand that, you also start to understand that connecting to the Holy Spirit isn't about what we say in our house of worship on a Sunday. It's not even whether we're in church on Sunday. It's the community of love we create for ourselves and for others. When that happens, God is there. That's God showing up. We're resting in God's hands." He mentions Ubi Caritas, this medieval hymn that basically translates to mean, wherever love is, God is there. Wherever love is, God is there. For in our scriptures, we know from 1 John 4, God indeed is love. Love with a capital L. Curry goes on to reflect on just what a huge hole in his heart was left by his mother Dorothy's death, and yet how he became the person he is today, largely because of her and his father, but also the love that surrounded him in that time, from their community of faith, from their neighbors, from their friends, and that he doesn't leave his teenage years in a bitter place or a broken place, as he could have without that community circle of love. And he shares some beautiful stories at the end of the chapter about how he came to know his mother in a new way. When folks saw him at a funeral or at the ordination of a bishop just a few years ago, who knew his mother and who could share stories with him about what she was like. And in fact, how she joined the Episcopal Church when she was on the west side of Chicago. It was his mother who convinced his father to become Episcopalian. He'd grown up Baptist and became an Episcopal priest because of his mother, Dorothy. They were so struck by the fact that in the 1940s, in a little Episcopal parish in West Chicago, they were sharing a common cup. White and black residents of Chicago, members of that church, were sharing a common cup, which was just astounding and so moving to both of them. It led to Michael Curry's father deciding to become Episcopalian and eventually pursuing the priesthood rather than staying in the Baptist church. So friends, I'll just leave you with one final quote and then a couple of questions. Actually, I'll share the questions first. I wonder a couple of things. First of all, what are you grieving right now? As we emerge out of the pandemic, slowly but surely, there's a lot of pent up, ambiguous grief. If you're like me, even if you haven't had profound, tangible losses of loved ones in your own circle, the amount of stuff we've been through is colossal. And so I wonder what grief you're wading through right now. A first question. Second question, what rituals of comfort, as Curry calls them, might you pursue right now in this summer season as things are opening up and it's warm and we're so grateful for the exhale, collectively speaking, we're enjoying right now? What are those rituals of comfort that would bring you back to connection with love, connection with God, connection with neighbor, in a way you maybe haven't experienced as much in the pandemic? I think about, of course, for me as a minister, the practice of worship, the practice of prayer. For me, it's often the practice of being out in God's creation, going for a walk, going for a jog, connecting with old friends who know me well and knew me when I was not a pastor, not an adult even, who knew me when I was just a boy. So a couple questions to ponder, finding rituals for our grief and just naming the grief we are experiencing and letting God's arms and hands even hold us and encircle us in these days. So a final quote I'll leave you with from page 49. He returns us to the old spiritual, which has been made even more famous by Lauryn Hill. His eye is on the sparrow, and he just cites one verse for us, and I'll leave you with these words today. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. For his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. Friends, God's love is everywhere and in all things, and that includes you. Thanks be to God.